Sekeres Price for Thursday, March 7th, 2024, coming to you from the Go-Go Sports Studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. If you're heading downtown for a game, an event, make it a staycation. Call the Wall, 604-331-1000. You can ask for the Sekeres and Price rates. Some blackout dates may apply. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price. Grady Sass hitting switches, conducting things. Got a big show planned for you, and it's all brought to you by Applewood Auto Group.
Applewood Nissan in Surrey has the 2023 Nissan Qashqai. Perfect for Vancouver, isn't it? The tight lanes and parking spots. Get the Qashqai into anything. And didn't get over anything. Finance at 2.99% up to 36 months. Applewood Nissan in Surrey. It's all good at Applewood.
Poll questions brought to you by Tim Hortons. And yes, I say two because of busy times here at trade deadline. Things change by the hour. Which would you rather see, Lindholm find his game or the Canucks trade for Jake Guentzel, although that appears less likely as of this moment. Also, do the Canucks have to keep up with the Western Conference arms race? Yes or no? Voting at Sekeres Price on Twitter and YouTube. I'll ask you the first one. Lindholm find his game, trade for Guentzel. Where are you at there?
Lindholm find his game.
Ditto. It mitigates some of the need for Guentzel. It gives the Canucks three good centers. There are other wingers available who are going to cost you less than Jake Guentzel. More on that in a moment.
Less chance to lose out on all the transactional fees as well.
Right. And Lindholm is not hurting you. He may not be producing at the level you would hope.
Yeah.
And it may be a huge trade cost to bring in a third line center if that's what he's going to be. Get all those things. And I also hear the quibbling about the prices the Canucks paid in comparison to what you're seeing these wingers go for, what Vegas paid for Noah Hanifin. And I get all that. There is some nuance and subtlety that we'll get into. But the other thing is, let's remember, everybody, the Canucks made the Lindholm deal 5 weeks ago. It was, of course, going to cost you more to be the early mover and get the player in for an additional. Lindholm's played 15 games. So you're getting him for almost half a season when you trade. And as we have talked about many, many times, you have this runway for him to get it out of his system, forge the chemistry. I mean, think of how we'd be panicking if Lindholm had a couple of games left in the regular season before the playoffs and looked like this. There's still some runway left.
And I wonder, too, if the Vancouver Canucks also used their games played column in this. They have, for most of the season, been ahead of the game in games played. They've had a busier schedule to this point. I mean, they're down to 18 games left. They will have 17 by the time the trade deadline rolls around. There's still teams that have over 20 games left in their season. So that, that is part of the equation here. They acquire somebody in the next 24 hours or in the next few minutes. They're down to 17 games with that player. If that player even arrives quickly, it could be 16. That's not very long.
As for the other one, do the Canucks have to keep up with the Western Conference arms race?
Given that they've got Lindholm, I can hear people saying no because they've already done that trade. I think they do need one more.
People, right? Yeah,
I think they do need. If I'm the, and I don't mean an 8th defenseman and a 14th forward. Sure, acquire those if you see a good one, but I'm talking about a surefire top 12 forward, a surefire top 6 defenseman, like somebody who's in the lineup. I think one more upgrade would be great. Yeah.
Because more happening this morning, Thursday morning, on the Western Conference side of things, with our old friend Troy from Richmond joining the Edmonton Oilers, Stetcher, and Brandon Duhaime going to the Colorado Avalanche. Since we last joined you Wednesday, of course, the Vegas Golden Knights acquire Noah Hanifin from the Calgary Flames, and everybody looking at the price and going like, what does Vegas have over everybody else? Now, Frank Seravalli is going to explain this later in the program. Noah Hanifin had a huge say here and exerted that say, but the trade goes down and it's Noah Hanifin from Vegas to Calgary for Daniil Miromanov, who's a quad A defenseman who Calgary has re-signed, a first-round pick, conditional. It could be a 2026 first-round pick, and a third-round pick conditional. It becomes a second if Vegas wins a playoff round. So to get Noah Hannafin, the best defenseman available, who was on a great contract, retained down to 25% because the Philadelphia Flyers jumped in here to be a broker for a 5th round pick. So it cost Vegas a 1st, a conditional 3rd, likely a 2nd, a 5th, and a quad A defenseman to get Noah Hannafin. And there's already talk that he will sign a contract extension with Vegas. They continue to milk and leverage the gift that they were given by the National Hockey League with the most generous expansion draft in professional sports history on this continent. Hell of a job by Kelly McCrimmon, but I hear all the people crying, howling, griping about the Vegas Golden Knights and their ability to make these sorts of trades. And frankly, it is all fruit from the original sin of that expansion draft being as generous as it is.
I don't see the relation.
No, it is, but they have parlayed it. They have been allowed to by everything that was set up for that expansion draft, giving them an instant microwave contender.
I'm not going to relitigate the expansion draft, but they are now just copying what we have seen from other teams like the Tampa Bay Lightning. Other teams have done this that weren't expansion teams. So I'll disagree with you on that one. What I do think is that there is cap circumvention happening, and no more severe than the Roberto Luongo cap circumvention was at the time. There were no rules preventing that contract from being signed, as we've talked about, ample number of times. Nor are there any express rules about laundering retention through multiple teams in one transaction. But it does break.
That's all fine.
But it does break the spirit of what the league was trying to do.
Right.
The spirit of the league was saying, no, 50% a team can. And then they had to say, okay, an additional team can do this. But that's not what they were trying to. They were trying to prevent GMs from being able to cover up their sins by laundering these retention.
I've got no problem with brokerage retention laundering, if you want to call it that, although I think that's...
But it's just creative, right, Matt? It's more creative.
Fine. I've got no problem with brokerage.
But it's
what
no
I have
more
a problem
creative
with is one team was clearly given competitive advantages by the league. Gary's golden child. The road is still paved with gold.
We're doing this again.
Roll Up to Win is here for Tim's 60th anniversary. Play on the Tim's app to win prizes. Daily cash jackpot of $10,000. You can win the all-electric Volkswagen ID4 and a sun-soaked Hilton getaway. Download the Tim's app. Roll Up is on until March 31st. I voted yes on the Canucks needing to keep up with the Western Conference arms race as well, if that wasn't clear.
Oh, no. We agreed on both of them?
Was I clear on the...
Even though I disagree
with you?
who
else has a problem with the
boy.
Vegas Golden Knights? Roberto Luongo. Did you see the tweet yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
Game 1 is the caption, and it's the meme of Kevin Nash, the wrestler, getting out of the wheelchair with the pretend broken leg and jumping into the ring. It was a reference to Mark Stone, who I suspect will be ready for game 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs with his injured spleen. But it gets more nauseous than that.
2 Strombo and 1 references in the opening segment here. Wow.
It gets more nauseous than that. This from Puckpedia and our friend Hart Levine. Vegas has $4.3 million in cap space available in LTIR with a full 23-player active roster. They also have several players on IR that could potentially be candidates for LTIR. Howden at 1.9, Carrier 1.4, Dorofeyev at 8.25, but Alec Martinez with 5.25, and apparently he's got a broken bone in his foot.
Matt, are you familiar with the saying, don't hate the playa, hate the game?
I love it when you say it like that, Grady.
Everything they're doing has been...
I hate the player and the game.
Okay.
I've got a lot of hate for this.
Here is with the NHL because Tampa Bay has done it.
Right. I have long said that. I have long
said
that.
There is
my beef is with the NHL. You're quite right.
To exploit.
I just said this. I just said all this. He doesn't care.
Pete Blackburn. The Vegas Golden Knights consistently operate like there's a massive meteor hurling towards Earth. Good player available. Might as well trade for them because we're all going to be dead in a couple of months. Anyway, Shayna Goldman, Noah Hannafin, and VGK working on an immediate extension. There have only been 4 of those in the last 10 years. Bo Horvat with the Islanders was one of them. Mark Stone with the Vegas Golden Knights was another. They're the Canucks' opponent on Thursday night. Anthony Mantha is going to play his first game for the Golden Knights. You'll remember they added him too.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to play with Carlson and Chandler Stevenson. Same lineup for the Vancouver Canucks. Demko in goal. Pettersson with Suter and Höglander. Miller with Besser and Mikheyev. Podkolzin with Lindholm and Garland. Okay,
where's Toffoli? Where's Toffoli on the lineup?
I'm getting to him.
They haven't signed him yet? Okay. Or haven't traded for him yet?
Our top story today, moving on to Tyler Toffoli. It sounds like the Jake Guentzel deal for the Canucks is dead, that they are unwilling to pay a direct price from Pittsburgh that would have involved Nils Höglander and Jonathan Lekkerimäki.
Mm-hmm.
The three-way deal with Boston seems it was more theoretical and talked about, and that doesn't seem to be going anywhere either. And it's funny because Nick Horwat in Pittsburgh tweeted last night, it sounds like the Vancouver Canucks would be Jake Guentzel's preferred destination. Interesting. You have to think that's the talk at Alvin Rutherford effect, right?
Yeah.
The familiarity with the coach and the management group. And it now does seem like the Canucks have turned their attention to our old friend Tyler Toffoli, who once upon a time was added by the Vancouver Canucks as a trade deadline addition from the LA Kings, went on to perform pretty well. Has chemistry with some of those Canucks. It was part of that 2020 bubble run.
I think you have to be careful. I'll send this PSA out to the listeners and viewers now. Be careful about all of the this is going to be expensive. This trades, all that's being fed by management to said reporters. What we're seeing in actuality are pretty reasonable prices thus far, even for the likes of Noah Hannafin and others. Pretty reasonable prices. Nobody has been over a barrel yet as a buyer on this trade market. You know, Guentzel, Kyle Dubas
may well have overplayed his hand.
Right. Like we've been hearing for how long now? For weeks about how expensive Guentzel's going to be. Let's just see how expensive Guentzel is. Reports of Toffoli's price being here, there, and ever. Let's just see what ultimately it costs to acquire Tyler Toffoli. The market is drying up. There's a lot of teams that have already consummated their business that are probably close to being done here.
Edmonton and Colorado may well be done.
They might be done. So I don't know that New Jersey and Pittsburgh are talking to a plethora of teams like they thought they were going to. They thought they had 12 teams at the trough, and it's not happening. So we'll just see. There's still some time here before the deadline, and something tells me at least one of those guys is going to go for a price that's a lot lower than originally
Emily Kaplan reported it was Vancouver, the Rangers, and Carolina in on Guentzel. And Carolina doesn't much like rentals. They believe that there would be an extension immediately in the offering or soon thereafter if they make the deal on Guentzel.
Did I see former GM Neil Smith suggesting that the Rangers are in on Guentzel now too?
Yeah, as Kaplan reported.
Yeah,
as well.
So it's part of the report. Yeah.
That's right. A lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
Tell them I'm better friends than Mr. Lube.
Yeah. The top story, as always, brought to you by Mr. Lube, pioneer of the no appointment oil change. You need tire service or sales? Also, no appointment needed. Warranty approved oil changes, by the way. 16 locations in the Lower Mainland, one near you. Go to MrLube.com.
Now, I may be fired up about Vegas and what they're able to do with cap circumvention, at least the spirit thereof, if not the letter of the law. But you'll remember the letter of the law sometimes isn't good enough in this league, Blake Price. And I suspect retroactive LTRR recapture penalties when the new CBA is signed, right? That's how Gary's going to mitigate this.
But the letter of the law also,
the letter of the law
will be enforced.
Isn't good enough when the commissioner feels that the spirit has been violated. We can all agree the spirit has been violated. I look forward to Vegas being penalized with LTIR recapture penalties after the next CBA.
And even when enforced, like in Ilya Kovalchuk's case, sometimes for good behavior.
That's right. Sometimes when a new owner's coming in to save the bacon of the franchise, which is on the scrappy,
you'll also be
will forgive those
granted
penalties.
clemency sometimes.
Just not with the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah.
I do think this Guentzel thing might be a blessing in disguise for Vancouver.
I think so
I
too.
can understand why Rutherford, Alvin, and Tocchet, because of the familiarity. Remember
That's
what
a great
John
player.
Shannon said to us, the great player, they're familiar with him. But he was going to cost you Lindholm, or he was going to cost you Höglander. Either way, it was going to cost you something from a forward group that we all agree probably isn't deep enough to come out of the Western Conference.
Yeah.
Toffoli isn't. Toffoli, like Mantha, like Tarasenko, maybe even like Wenberg, although he's a center iceman, is probably going to cost you a couple of picks, a second and something. It is not going to subtract from the current lineup. And quite frankly, given where the Canucks are now, given where the Canucks are going forward, I think that's a more advantageous trade. I would give it reasonably good odds, 60-40, 40-60, that Toffoli can perform to close to a Guentzel level.
Absolutely.
from what's left the regular season and into the postseason. If that's costing me 2 future picks as opposed to a guy who's helping me now, let alone a top prospect like Lekramaki, to me, that's a better deal.
The difference is not like you have to consider. Let's just argue that you had to give up Höglander in a Guentzel deal. You don't in a Toffoli deal. Well, Höglander and Toffoli together are better than Guentzel on his own. So the totality of those two, look around the league, all the big deals that have been done, all the deals, period. How many of the contenders, and we've talked about this Western Conference arms race, how many of the Western Conference contenders have jettisoned a pretty integral part of their lineup to acquire
nobody,
the player?
I mean, Colorado has Bo and Byram certainly was part of that lineup.
That was a hockey trade more than a deadline trade per se.
Byram had been falling out of favor a little bit there. The reporting was he and Jared Bednar had a meeting some weeks ago. But you're quite right. No, I mean, outside of that, Colorado has done adding.
Like particularly
Edmonton
for rentals.
Has done adding.
Of Vegas all the rentals you see.
I mean, Vegas gave up their 7th defenseman, but that's no big.
No. Like contributor every day. Höglander's a 20-goal scorer already, really. You know, like
I suppose you can say Ron Johansson as well, although he was falling out of favor with the Avalanche as well, the pride of Port Moody.
Shadow of his former self.
Right.
So, key contributor?
Yeah. No, Blake, the prices on these wingers and forwards have been reasonable.
Yeah.
Sensible.
Just sensible.
The prices on other guys, and of course, Vegas getting Hannafin, but like the Leafs gave up 2 picks today for Joel Edmondson. No. That's a no offense, purely third pair left side defense.
Well, his offensive metrics have been a little bit better than expected, but they're not sure why.
Now, let's get to Brandon Duhaime for a second, because the Canucks were kicking tires on Duhaime for some time. Frank Seravalli gave us that story a few weeks back.
And again, a reasonable price.
He goes for a 2026 third round pick. Now, I'm of 2 minds with Brandon Duhaime. Number one, look, the player cards aren't very good here. We're talking about a guy who gives you nothing in the way of offense and is playing 10 minutes and 40 seconds a night for Minnesota. In fact, a few weeks ago, we were looking at Minnesota at the deadline and what they have to sell, and I think we even skipped over Brandon Duhaime. I'll put myself on errors and omissions. 8 points in 62 games. Now, the other side of the coin, he's a truculent playoff-style player, has some jam, and is a penalty killer.
He has played 12 playoff games with the Wild, though with 0 contribution.
Yeah,
so, like,
I can understand, and J-Pat's been talking about this, needing to reformulate that fourth line and give it some identity, and I understand he may well have done that for the Vancouver Canucks. But he in isolation, he alone, for me, is not necessarily what the doctor ordered. He's the nice to do, not really the need to do.
Well, let me ask you this.
So you tell me, should they have beaten the price on Duhaime?
No, I think I like that price. If they also offered theirs, would
could they have offered an earlier third rounder? Would that have gotten the deal done if they paid a?
Yeah, maybe.
Would you have gone to a second for him? I would not have gone to a second for him.
not for that player.
No.
Well, let me ask you this, and let me bring up his
Canucks third-round pick. I say a future third. They've traded out their 25 third-round pick. They've traded out their 26 third-round pick, and their 2024 third-round pick is conditional right now. If Vancouver makes it to the conference finals, Calgary gets that pick in the
let me ask you this.
Lindholm deal.
Brendan Lemieux on waivers right now for free.
Yeah.
Truculent. He's on a one
and these are very good points.
Expiring contract.
Those, much like the cost difference between Toffoli and Guentzel, you can play that game with the fourth liners as well.
Right. Like no cost of acquisition to get. And I've never considered Brendan Lemieux in my life really as a guy. I only knew that he's clothes son and he was a second round pick if I'm not mistaken. And popped on the waiver wire today though from Carolina. Like if you want truculence, you want a guy who'll throw his weight around a little bit. He's there for you if you want it. And plays under Brandon Moore.
The other thing on Duhaime was there wasn't a lot of this player available here. That he has a profile that wasn't abundantly available at this deadline. That guy who plays on the edge, that guy who can be in a 7-game series in particular, the type of guy who the other team and its fan base just hates his face and wants to punch him. And sometimes does.
Can be useful.
Draws penalties.
Can be useful.
Yes.
But it can also be a pain within the room if it's not done properly.
Right.
So
sometimes can cost your team.
Yes.
Look at early Nazem Kadri getting all those suspensions for the Toronto Maple Leafs in the playoffs.
Hey,
until he figured
I even think Max Lapierre back in 2011, probably there was a couple of moments where the team was like, Max, come on. So there's good times and bad times.
Now, the Vancouver Canucks had a interesting night. Well, first of all, let's start with Podkolzin.
By the way, Tyler F on YouTube with a callback. What about Ann Stamkos? Tyler, an avid listener from back in the day, referencing a caller's suggestion.
Let's we're gonna save Podkolzin here. We're gonna do him in a moment. On Lindholm. Jim Rutherford speaking to, I guess it's Chris Faber in-house. We're seeing the benefit of the Lindholm trade because he's still going through an adjustment period. We'd like to see more out of him offensively, but in fairness to him, he has moved around the lineup from center to right wing, and I think talk has got him to a point now where he likes the idea of having those four centers really strong down the middle. Alvin had mentioned this to Faber on the weekend, that they like the look of that 3-center lineup. Rutherford continues. Lindholm does a lot of good things that don't show up in the box score on the defensive side of the puck too. I would say that since we've got him, he's been okay. If we can get a little more on the offensive side of it, I think everybody would be happier. So it does seem like they are forging forward with Lindholm as the center. He's not hurting them.
He's a smart player. He's a responsible player. So that's and come playoff time again with this group that hasn't got a ton of experience. Even if you're not hitting on all cylinders offensively, if you're responsible, dependable out there, and they're not getting many chances on you, that's great come playoff time.
Now, my worry when I read that, and when Rutherford talks about those, is, are we going to see Blueger, Joshua, Garland back together? Because if you're leaving Lindholm at center, probably not, right? He's probably going to take up some of those wingers. Are they going to have the same effect? And for those who question the chemistry fit and why mess with it at the time of the Lindholm trade, they have some ammunition, Blake, right now. Because Blueger, Garland, and Joshua was tracking as one of the best third lines in hockey. And Joshua got hurt, and the Canucks have been, quite frankly, not very good without Dakota Joshua.
Okay, but Matt,
it's a little bit concerning that you can lose your third line left winger, and he has that kind of effect. But what I would be worried about is that you have lost what you had with that third line to further accommodate Elias Lindholm and his need to play center, having tried him as the right winger with Pettersson.
Get mad about things that we know, and we don't know that at all because Joshua's not around. So we have nothing to base that on right now. For all we know,
What do you mean?
well, we don't know if those three will play together because those three aren't available right now. When those three are available to be put together and they're not put together, then you can talk about that. But right now, we have no idea because by the time it rolls around,
But Blake, if you're playing Lindholm as your third line center, there's probably a very good chance that third line is not getting back together.
Well, two things. Jim Rutherford doesn't coach the team. Rick Tocchet does. And if Rick Tocchet says, no, I'm going to do this now, which is, put him on the wing with Pettersson or put him at center with Pettersson on the wing, then Rutherford's going to let him do that.
Then promise me this, that trailing 2-1 in a Stanley Cup playoff series, we're not going to see Blueger, Garland, and Joshua back together as the act of desperation move.
I don't think that's if it's 2-1, that's not desperation. No. I'm going to get this group going.
I have visions of Lindholm and whoever the wingers are on a third line. It's not really working early in a playoff series, and now we have to go back.
But why is that bad? You've got that in your back pocket. That sounds strategic.
Because you're trailing in the series to accommodate your deadline acquisition.
Well, no,
I guess the bottom line of what I'm saying is, don't try to validate the Lindholm acquisition by moving all the deck chairs around when you know there's a deck chair alignment that works with Blueger, Garland.
But Matt, come on. They're not doing anything for optics at that point. When you're in the playoffs, you're there to win the game. The coach is
hope so.
Well, come on. After all where this roster's been through with the way this management got off to an auspicious start.
You've had the GM and the president now message they like that center alignment with Lindholm down the middle.
Yeah, you say what is the flavor of the day right now. That's the way they've got it lined up. So
you don't think the coach knows that?
What do you think Rick Tocchet is kowtowing to what Jim Rutherford is?
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is Rutherford and Alvin have a lot riding on the Lindholm acquisition.
But they don't care where
said he's a center. He's now playing him at the center spot. Great. If he works out there, he should be the best third line center in the league. But if it's happening at the expense of a line that was really going and a big part of your success through the first 3 quarters of the season, then I think you have to go back and look at Rutherford and Alvin and say, how come you guys missed this?
I can't believe I'm defending this because I don't think that they should be playing those 3 down the middle. I think it should be consolidated top 6 and those 3 reunited. Right. But
Grady has a trade to announce.
Is it Canuck related?
We have a trade to announce.
Okay. You're going to want to hear this?
You're going to want to hear this.
I am. Okay.
So Avalanche had already acquired Brandon Duhaime earlier on in the day. Well, now they've added Yakov Trenin from the Preds, so they are really beefing up that bottom 6 of theirs.
And Colorado isn't done.
To our full,
you interrupted a spirited discussion on the Canucks lineup for Yakov Trenin.
Where is your sense of timing, son?
Honestly.
Hey, if breaking trades happen on the show, I'm
going
to put them up.
Not Yakov Trenin for Jeremy Hansel.
But hold on.
If Jake Guentzel had gone down, you jump right in and you talk over us.
Yes. It ties into our poll question, though. You want to ask about if the Canucks need to do more in the arms race in the West?
Loosely.
You win in the margins. Colorado Avalanche.
That's in the margins, all right. You've waded into the margins. That is for sure.
All right, I'm shutting up now.
Thank you.
Marginal. It's Grady's brand.
Oh, my goodness.
I like the spirit. I like the gumption. I like the energy.
It's an exciting time. There's breaking news.
Folks,
that's why we're live again.
Folks, he's like a golden retriever puppy. He's just very excited.
I'm excited, too. I get it. I'm excited for today's show as well.
Blake, we're going to set the discussion aside.
Mm-hmm.
Grady has come in here and ended matters. But I want to circle back on this one in the playoffs.
Well, sure.
Okay.
But my point is the situation is fluid and will always be fluid.
And that is fair. That is fair. What I'm saying is you're 15 games into this guy and you have already tried to move him. So there's a part of them that already knows they've already done effed up a bit. And they're looking for ways to make this work, which is why you're now hearing president, GM, all talking about 3 centers down the middle.
The caveat.
And again, you've got 18 games to get this thing together. And I don't dispute that they can. He's a good player. They should. But it is also now heaping pressure on your need to get that winger, which brings me back to Toffoli, because as much as I would love a Vasily Podkolzin redemption story here, he's playing with Lindholm and Garland. And as much as I'd like to think Petey with Höglander and Pius Suter works, Mikheyev is playing with Miller and Besser tonight. Like, do they have to move on from Mikheyev as the top 9? Can he only be a 4th line winger for the Canucks going forward? Because to me, that Petey, Höglander, and Suter could work. Lindholm, Garland, Podkolzin as the placeholder for Joshua could work. Should work.
Right now, Mikheyev is a 4th line winger.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a 4th line winger.
So that's the spot that is the most upgradable on the club, right?
Well, check out this
or
graphic.
third pair right shot.
Check out the graphic we have on the screen here from Tyson Cole, who writes for Canucks Army. And he pointed out Toffoli's history with not only Pettersson, but with Lindholm himself from their Calgary days. And he's got all these different line combinations here. And this is one of the things we've talked about. They have all these guys that can play center. They can play wing. You bring in a guy like Toffoli, does Lindholm go to the middle? Do they keep Lindholm on the outside? They got the combinations now to tinker with, which is, to me, a coach's dream for Rick Tocchet.
And this is why you watch on YouTube, folks, so you can see Tyson Cole.
And this is why I was more excited about Toffoli than even Guentzel, even though I know intrinsically Guentzel is a better player. Cost of acquisition, familiarity. If I'm a Canucks fan, I'm more excited about Toffoli than I am about Guentzel, because when you factor into the cost and the fact you're not likely robbing Höglander of the from the lineup as well. So to me, it's a slam dunk if they could make that trade happen. But we'll see, of course.
Sorry, what was that Yakov Trenin return since you broke?
Yeah, boy, we really need that.
I feel like he's an 80s comedian. Yakov Trenin.
Totally. To the Avs, Yakov Trenin, Graham Sward, big Graham Sward fan. Not. To the Preds, Jeremy Hansel, a 2025
third round.
Yeah. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, Trenin is a little bit of a truculence guy.
Yeah, he can play all over the lineup, center, wing.
He's a nice player. I'm not saying he's not a nice player, but he's
but that's
but those guys
interesting.
Come to light in the playoffs.
Nashville adding guys and moving guys out all in one.
Like what the heck are they up to? Yeah, very odd.
Well, they claimed Anderson
column
Dolan.
A, little column B. Yeah, so they must feel like with Anderson Dolan, and who else did they require here in Nashville?
They got Beauvillier.
Right. Tito.
Yeah. So yeah, lots of moving parts here.
Mm-hmm. So we're all agreed they have to upgrade Mikheyev, and Toffoli's the guy.
I'm okay with Mikheyev in the lineup.
No, but I mean in the top 9.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
But if there is a way you can rehabilitate that $4.75 million cap hit.
Well, so there is the elephant in the room.
Who's lining up to take that with all his injury history and his cold streak?
I think you have to sweeten it. We talked about this earlier in the week, and I don't think Matt thought you have to sweeten Mikheyev yet. I think you do have to sweeten Mikheyev.
If not Toffoli, Vetrano too much term, thus too big a cost. Would that be how you
kick the tires? I'm not saying you don't kick the tires. You definitely
Buchnevich and Vetrano. We think that just the acquisition cost is going to be
probably.
It's probably involving a Wheelander, a Leckermacky, or a first-round pick for one of those guys, right?
Certainly a Höglander at the very least.
Well, they'd ask.
Yeah.
Can I ask the Jordan Eberle question, who we haven't spent a lot of time with, just down the I-5 in Seattle? Now, needless to say, is known for big goals, but at the World Junior level.
Yeah.
He's not having a terrible year by any stretch.
No, he kind of defies the clock in a lot of ways.
He's big money, but Seattle would have to retain. He's a rental.
I don't have it in front of me. What's his playoff history like? Because, Jonathan Marchessault, of course, defies what we would definitely say is the customary playoff performer. Usually you need some level of size and truculence to perform in the playoffs.
47.
He's fine. He's good in the playoffs. Not great, 76. But he's good.
I mean, he's damn near played a full season in the postseason, and he he'd meet out as a 20-goal, 50-point guy.
Hey, 11 points in 14 games in their run last year when they knocked off the Avs.
Yep. And made it to Game 7 against Dallas. Like they were a goal away from.
I can't even fathom what cost of acquisition would be on that. And I don't mean it's going to be expensive. I really don't know what he pencils in at his
probably
age of 33.
I mean, I would think
34.
I would think a little less than Mantha and Tarasenko. He hasn't quite gotten up to that level.
Yeah.
A third and a fifth or something.
Where are you guys on Anthony Duclair? Not a
playoff
guy.
The thing about Duclair is just I forever wonder why so many teams want to move off him, Grady. Like, I believe why he bounces around so much
he's his own agent.
As a guy who's a pretty good scorer, but Rangers, Coyotes, Chicago, Columbus, Ottawa, Florida, San Jose, like look at the number of franchises.
I think the knock on him has been his defensive underlying stats. But
so is he a forecheck or is he a talking style player?
Right. But he's got a lot of wheels and he can score. And that's what this team needs right now.
Pacioretty is too old for you, Blake. I believe you've said in the past.
Durability is too big an issue.
Riley Smith, not having a great year, but lots of playoff pedigree from his years with Vegas there.
I'd kick tires on that. I'd see
Pittsburgh
what the cost
would
is.
Have to retain because he's on $5 million. He's got an extra year, Riley Smith. So you're committing to him.
And how old is he now?
32.
Oh, yeah, he's a few years younger than I thought. There was a little that. I don't love that. Don't love the extra year for him.
Okay.
Can we launder that to 75% off?
And then there's Zucker, and we talked about Zucker yesterday in Arizona. We talked about him on Wednesday's show. In fact, on Tuesday's show as well, if I'm not mistaken. That the Canucks were kicking tires on him, and he also looks like a plan B if no Guentzel.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't know. Is he plan C if no Toffoli, or do they view Zucker and Toffoli in the same?
I think Zucker's one step below. Yeah, he's next rung down.
Yeah, I mean,
certainly in performance.
He's not on a lot of goals.
No,
Jason Zucker. So,
and he's older too. Well, is he older than Toffoli? They're around the same age. No, I think Toffoli's younger. So I think you focus on Toffoli right now. You got some time if you're the Vancouver Canucks, and you try to get that one across the line.
Want to remind you the Daily Faceoff trade deadline show on Friday morning. You can tune in on their YouTube channel as well. A portion of the show is going to be available on the Game Network if you get the Game Network. The portion of the show on the Game Network is going from out of here for a second. Starting at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Daily Face-Off Trade Deadline special on the Game Plus network. You can also watch it on their YouTube and social channels. As for us, we're going to be here live on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter from 11:30 onwards. Friday morning, we will be a longer show than per usual. We'll, of course, have J-Pat from Rogers Arena.
It'll take as much time as it takes.
Yeah, exactly.
As news merits.
Right. And, depending on what the Canucks do, by all means, monitor our social channels because something goes down. We are going to hop right into it with Grady's two favorite words, emergency show.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Yakov Trenin.
I wish we had a GoPro Saturday morning when that Pettersson deal broke. Like, I was in full scramble mode trying to produce the two shows. I got Sekeres calling me, trying to set up the studio cameras.
Sweeping the empty cans off your chest.
Yeah. All the crumbs from the night before.
That's what we can look forward to.
A good Saturday morning press release.
I'm just glad. I'm just happy I was up. I'm just happy I was up. I was able to digest it in real time, send a text to everyone. JPAT answered instantly. And then I sat there and thought, I wonder how long until Blake and Grady are awake and see.
Matt is the oldest 40-something that you'll come across right now. He is going to bed at around 7:30. He's up at around 4:45. He is
sending text messages at 6:01 a.m.
Just making sure this lawn bowling membership is
and
up to
that
date.
Was restraint at 6:01 a.m.
Yeah. Well,
I waited till the clock hit 6:01 before I texted you.
I woke up to my phone buzzing, and it has a specific sound for Twitter notifications, and I'm just like, they signed Pettersson. Oh my God, they signed Pettersson.
Yeah.
Sure enough, and then boom, all our texts. internal messages came in.
All right. So you just be prepared for all of that to go down perhaps this afternoon.
There's a reason why I wasn't on camera that day.
Mm-hmm.
You could probably figure out why.
Speaking of the YouTube show, the live show, we're going a little longer today, huh?
A little bit.
Yeah.
And shout out to the 2,600 people watching live on
fantastic.
Twitter.
Brilliant. So let's get to today's menu. It's brought to you by Ben Moss Jewelers, proudly Canadian-owned, operated with a history dating back more than 100 years. 5 locations in BC, including Willowbrook and Langley, Coquitlam Center. Committed to customer satisfaction. You can check out the large selection of Canadian mine diamonds, lab-grown diamonds, and mine diamonds available with payment plans to suit your needs. For more info, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, for the love of jewelry. Ray Ferraro is going to join us here. We talked to Ray just as the Duhaime trade was breaking, a little before, actually. So we get into the discussion on guys like Guentzel, Lindholm, Dakota Joshua, Lindholm, where best he fits, Toffoli, the arms race going on in the West, including the Vancouver Canucks team MVP, and Frank Seravalli stopping by as well on what's scuttled the Guentzel trade, or scuttling. I guess I shouldn't use past tense just yet.
Yeah, never say
it could
never
happen.
say die. No.
Toffoli, the 3-way deal there, and more with our NHL insider Frank Seravalli. That's coming up after Ray Ferraro.
In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey setup as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova.
Park is the official casino resort of the Vancouver Canucks, and Sekeres Price, we're heading there. Yeah, March 13th. Join us for a live show at BC Kitchen in advance of the game against Colorado. You get 15% off the game day menu at BC Kitchen with a game ticket, $6 happy hour specials at Center Bar. Park, just steps away from Rogers Arena. We'll see you on March 13th. Joined now by ESPN hockey analyst, one half of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast, the one and only Ray Ferraro. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I've got a week at home, heading to Boston on the weekend. And for Pittsburgh, I can only imagine what that lineup's going to look like Saturday morning. But I don't think it'll look the same as it does at this moment. That's for sure.
Let me guess, you really missed the all-day grind of trade deadline, right?
This week I talked to Jamie McLennan and Dregs. Jamie was on our pod talking about Mika Kiprasov's retirement. And he's taking the red eye back from LA because he's doing a game out there to get there in time to do Trade Center all day with 92% of the trades already completed. And I was like, oh, that sounds miserable. So yes, I'm very comfortable in my not being there position.
Yeah. Unless something changes here, Ray, it doesn't sound like Jake Guentzel is going to be a Vancouver Canuck. What did you think of that pursuit, that fit, and what did you make of the fact that Lindholm might have been needed or necessary to get Guentzel to Vancouver?
Well, fit, fantastic. I think Jake Guentzel's a terrific player. He's a really interesting character. If you look at him, he's not the most stout guy, but he plays a pretty heavy game, as heavy as he can play it. He's a one-shot scorer. He doesn't need a lot of chances to score. He plays clearly with a terrific player. So playing with good players is not a stretch for him. So like sometimes you bring a player in, you play him with another good player and they defer, they don't feel right. Guentzel, wherever Guentzel goes, he's going to be an effective player. I'd be shocked without. Now, as far as, the chat about Lindholm being involved, Pittsburgh's, I can't think of a team in a worse spot than Pittsburgh, actually, right now. Like, how do you unscrew the cap there? Like, they're in such dire straits. Like, if you go get a first and a 21-year-old and, another future for Guentzel, how does that help with Crosby, Malkin, Letang, and Carlson? Like, it doesn't fit. So that's where an established player made more sense to me. But Kyle Dubas has got he's sitting there juggling these different teams around, and there's really three portions to every trade. So all these teams are doing their work on their own team, and so they identify their need. And once they get their need, they look for the availability around the league. And once you have the availability, you've identified that, like you've identified the availability to your need, then you need the assets to make the availability fill the need. So Pittsburgh's doing it in reverse. Like the need, they have the want, and now they got to find the best buy that they can get. So, I mean, what an enormous game of high stakes poker that the general managers play at this time of year.
Why do you think Lindholm hasn't fit better as a Canuck as he in these 16 or so games? And do you think they have to move him after this getting out about the three-way with Boston, maybe being used to fetch Guentzel?
Well, there's a lot of maybes to it. And, and that would be a discussion, I think, at one point between the management and, with Patrick Allvin and Lindholm, and to make comfortable everybody going forward. Yeah. Whether it is fact or it was somebody, like I can guarantee you not everybody, teams around the league are suggesting wild scenarios all the time. Hey, what if we did this? What if this happened? Could that happen? And I think that's pretty prevalent. As far as Lindholm, I think he's a really good player. I'm just looking up here because I don't have it off the top of my head, but 2 years ago he had 82 points. He's had a 78-point year and never more than 65. So in reality, what were people expecting Lindholm to be? Were they expecting him to be an 80-point guy? Well, it tells us in his career, then you're hoping that he's going to be a career year guy. I do think there is really good hockey ahead of Lindholm. I don't know how closely you watched the LA game. So he got hurt at the end of the first period. He was late coming back at the start of the second. I thought he was fantastic after that. Like he played with a purpose. He played with a directness. And I've seen him long enough. That's when he's at his best. Now, I don't know what the getting banged up and, and coming back had to do with it, but I thought he was awesome.
If they can add to the roster, keeping him, I mean, do you want him more than a half point per game? You do.
6 and 15.
Yeah, so he's slipping below that even. So I think you want him at least. So I think he would say that he wants that a little bit higher. But come playoff time, Ray, given that this group doesn't have a ton of experience playing together in the playoffs, he just seems like a guy who's smart. His hockey sense is pretty good. His defensive responsibility is pretty good. Like, that's the kind of player I think the Canucks should want to have in the lineup, ideally, come playoff time.
Yeah, sure. But you have to also look at it this way, Blake, too, is if that discussion was true, and I got no idea, it's not like anybody was coming out and, and definitively marketing that.
Yeah.
Who are you getting that's better for your team?
Yeah.
Like how many players would be better? I do think, I got moved at the deadline one time really that mattered when I got traded from Atlanta to St. Louis. I got to practice the first day and I'm like, same league, right? And I'm like, what the hell are they doing here? The breakouts are different. The terminology is different. It took me, I was 37. Like I should have been able to handle this. And it took me, I actually did the same thing Lindholm did. I got a goal and an assist my first game. And, I felt, oh yeah, I'm fine. And then pretty soon I was in the spin cycle. Like I didn't know what I was doing. And I do think there's a little bit of that. Like the Calgary Flames do not play like the Vancouver Canucks. Should he be able to figure it out? Yes, of course he should. And I think he will. I'm a little surprised that it hasn't looked smoother for him because I think he's a very good player.
Tocchet has said he's a centerman. And forgetting for a second that centermen like yourself have long told us it should be easier to play the wing. But Tocchet has said he's a centerman, has classified him as such. How much would they be losing if they just left Lindholm at center and said, Elias Pettersson, you're going to play left wing here to accommodate this guy? Would they be losing a ton in terms of Elias's ability to create from the center of the ice and or his defensive acumen in terms of coming back? Is that the fit that they need to get to with Lindholm, or are you okay stacking the centerman?
Yeah, I'm done with it, Ray. I want some conglomeration here, and I don't care how it happens. But do you want those three guys as separate centers? And I'm talking, I will put Miller into this conversation, or do you want some consolidation?
It would be awesome if you can have.
If you can spread,
it would be awesome to be that secure in the middle of the ice. Maybe your lineup past Saturday tells you that you can't be, right? Like depending what else comes in or doesn't come in, maybe that becomes an issue. One thing that you could have never sold me this in 100 years on day 5 of training camp was that the Canucks would miss Dakota Joshua this much. There is zero chance. Yeah. You take him out of the lineup and look at how things don't quite look right.
No.
Right? You've got somebody playing up, you've got somebody playing down. That line, Blueger and Garland don't fit together anymore, so they drop Blueger down. And I don't know. It's just it astounds me that Dakota Joshua has played that well and become that much of a linchpin for the way that the lines are going to be set up.
Absolutely.
Like I know, like Teddy Blueger, I see he's got no goals in, I don't know, what's it, 27 games or whatever. He was awesome in LA.
Yeah.
Like eventually doesn't the puck have to go in sometime?
That's
maybe.
The theory.
Yes.
That's the theory.
Yeah, that's the theory, right? So maybe there's a time where if they do get to Lindholm and Pettersson together, like maybe that is what's coming down the road. Who knows? Then you move Suter into the middle, which is what your original plan is. You've got a lot and then Blueger stays as your 4 guy. You've got options. The one thing I do or have grown to like about this Canuck lineup this year is the versatility of the way people can play around the lineup. It gives Talk a lot of options when things don't go well to maybe move a piece here, move a piece there. And I do think that's valuable. Would it be great if you had every game you could pencil in Kunitz and Crosby and Dupuis like Pittsburgh did for 7 years? Like you just wrote those 3 guys in. Well, it'd be great. Can't do that. Not in today's game. It doesn't seem to work that way.
Is there anybody that's conventionally available right now in the trade market that you think, wow, that guy would do wonders for them? And again, guys that we've heard bandied about that are available.
Well, honestly, there's 2 forwards. Like, I've already stated my love of Jake Guentzel. I think so we're going to take him out of the mix because we've already talked about him. Of course, Tyler Toffoli is interesting because he can score and he's heavy. Like, you might like him to go a gear faster, but he gets to where he's going. And he can play. He can play, and he can play in the playoffs. If you're looking at a different player, I really like Brandon Duhaime in Minnesota. He's on the market. Apparently, they just left on a road trip for 2 games, and he's got a giant suitcase with him. So just in case he's not going to be caught short of underwear, he's packed and ready to go. But he feels like a Vancouver player. Like he's got good size. He's physical. He forechecks, can score just a little bit. Like those are different ends of the, of the spectrum perhaps. But both of those guys would would be of interest. Who knows?
That sounds like a good deadline. That sounds like a good deadline to me.
I don't think
add that from this point for sure.
Yeah.
I was just going to say the last part of all of this stuff is the determination. What are you going to give up? What?
Sure.
Like, Tom Fitzgerald can ask for whatever he wants on Tyler Toffoli if he's got two teams that are really interested. If he's only got one, then your ask gets a little different.
Yeah. I mean, the prices on Mantha and Tarasenko and Wenberg have been reasonable. So I think that class of player are prices that the Canucks can afford and feel good about. And Duhaime even less so than that. So I think that's infinitely doable. Gents, just back on Joshua. Like, you have to put Blueger, Garland, and Joshua back together when Joshua
for sure
returns,
I think
right?
so.
You need to see that again to make, just to make sure that
I'm going to disagree.
Oh, okay.
And the reason I'm going to disagree is if you don't get another winger, you're going to need Suter on the wing. Right?
Yeah, probably.
So I think if I have no worry that Blueger, Joshua, Garland works. If you want to go with the three centers, I'm trying Lindholm in the middle of those two. I might get more offense out of Lindholm. Well, I will get more offense out of Lindholm than I will out of Blueger.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But sometimes, and it's a great mystery to a chaotic game, is coaches write these lines on the board and some of them look like they work. Like, oh my gosh, look at that line. That should work. And then somebody gets hurt and they put three guys together, like Alex Burrows with the Sedins. And who the hell thought that was going to work? They're like, just go fill in over here until we get to the next game. Oh, geez, that worked. Let's try it again. Like that. Do you think when Tocchet put Blueger between Joshua and Garland, he was thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be one of the best third lines in the league? Do you think that was the discussion about?
Probably not. No.
Probably not. And then 4 games in, they're like, geez, I think we got something here.
Yeah.
Like, it happens all the time. So I would be comfortable that the Blueger centerpiece in between those two guys will work and will be as effective. I would want to see if I would be comfortable that the Blueger piece.
Oh, right.
Works.
I don't need.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I already got that. I don't.
You don't need to go back to that now because you're going to try Lindholm there.
Yeah.
So
I could play Blueger there in game 1 of the playoffs and be really comfortable.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I want to see what it. I'm hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
I would be hopeful that, man, it seems like Garland and Joshua, they're kind of like Mutt and Jeff, and they're like they just fit. They seem to know where the other guy's going to be. What if that unlocks Lindholm a little bit?
It's true.
Right. So you're wholly against moving Pettersson to wing to accommodate Lindholm at center.
I like Pettersson in the middle. I like Pettersson in the middle of the ice. I really do. He's too.
But do you have quality people with him? Is the problem?
Yes, right? I think again, that's a Saturday morning discussion.
Right. See how the dust settles and see what happened. Yeah.
Right. Because I do. You know what's going to happen, guys? We're all going to on Friday night. We're going to sit there and have our heads go trying to figure out who improved, who got worse, who did this, who did that. And it's going to take a little bit of time for guys to settle in once they get kicked in the pants and get traded. Because as much as you might want to be traded, when you land in an airport and you don't know anybody there, it's an odd feeling. And the game should be your safe haven. Oftentimes it's not. So we're going to try and figure that out this weekend, and it might take a week for it all to shake out. And you go, oh, this is what they're doing. Like the Oilers are playing today. I just noticed. So everybody's talking about the added 2 centers in Henrique and Carrick, and Henrique's playing on left wing with Draisaitl. So like you need time to see how this is going to shake out.
What do you make of the arms race? Just, you don't have to go through every transaction, but I mean, we're not even done yet, Ray. And we have seen the West just explode here.
Yeah. It's funny how each year it's something, it's one group. It's a collection of teams that they're all around each other, but it's the entire West. And it tells you that you could do just about everything right and get nowhere.
Good teams are going down in the first round. Like it's
first round, really great teams.
Yeah.
Teams that somebody is going to pick to get to the conference final, and they're going to get punted.
Yeah.
And the West is, I'm a little hesitant here to say, to make my final determination on Vegas, because they still have another $56 million to spend somehow. I don't know how the hell they're going to do it, but they do it. They just, man, they're aggressive. I know people are getting their pants in a knot about the LTI, but I would assume that Mark Stone's not pretending he's got a lacerated spleen or whatever he's got, right? Like you would assume that that's not the case. And the league tells us, and it's all you can hang your hat on, is they monitor the LTI stuff. But now all of a sudden Vegas has got another $3 million in LTI to go. And so I think Vegas and Edmonton would be my favorites coming out of the West. But man, I wouldn't eventually, like, say they both win their first round series. If they don't play each other in the first round, one of them's out in the second round. Like it's going to be a beast.
Maybe Vegas has found the secret, though. You go as exotic of an injury or something as possible, just so that people wouldn't ever question it. Like a dengue fever or something like that. Like no one's gonna question it, right? Like maybe they're onto something here.
I don't even know what the hell you just said.
I've heard of it.
I don't really know this illness of which you speak.
I'm not sure of the timeline.
So you're going to question it? You don't even know it. How could you question it?
Exactly. There you go.
This is my point.
And I don't want to bring up.
Man, they drop Noah Hannafin into that lineup, and and they get Mantha a little bit earlier. I did the Western Conference Final last year, and in Game 6 in Dallas, it's 3-2. Vegas won the first 3 games somehow. Dallas wins games 4 and 5. So now they're back in Dallas. It's Game 6. The building's just revving. I'm looking at Vegas in warm-up. They're a football team on skates. They're enormous. They have, and I noticed at the time, I'm like, they got one small guy. He ended up winning the Conn Smythe.
Yeah,
Marchessault.
Yeah.
And so now they had a 6'5" Mantha and a 6'3" Hannafin. Like, they're not getting smaller.
And they're not slow either with that size.
Oh, that's a really, really good team. And they would scare a lot I think there's a lot of teams that don't want to play them.
Well, I think everybody wants Vegas and Edmonton to beat each other up in the first round, if at all possible.
Certainly the Canucks do.
Yeah. And I think the rest of the league does too, because then you get rid of one of them.
Right. And I don't want to bring up old wounds here, Ferraro, but road paved with gold. Road paved with gold.
Yes. He has to mention it.
I am contractually bound. We've had a good chat this year about team MVP for the Vancouver Canucks, because I think you can go a few ways here. And of course, there's some runway left, which I suspect may well prove definitive here in terms of deciding where people are going. Who's your Canucks team MVP as we stand right now?
Well,
yeah, that's that tough of
I think if you ask me tomorrow, I'd probably say a different guy than today.
Right.
If I think it bugs me that I can't. It just doesn't say Demko right away. I think he's amazing. There's about 5 or 6 or 7 guys in the league that stand alone in the position, and he's one of them.
It's true.
Like he's just so good. Hughes is having an amazing year. I would put, out of the 4 guys that I'll mention, I'll put Pettersson 4th.
I agree.
My decision is between Hughes and Miller.
Which seems unfair to Pettersson and Demko, as you said, but that would be my 2 as well.
But you can only pick one. right?
Yeah.
It's,
And here's the other thing. Miller, Demko, Miller, Pettersson, with a late surge, they could all move into
change.
pole position here. There's still a lot of hockey to be played.
See, if I were awarding it in 2024, it would be Miller.
Yeah.
Like if it's just
calendar
2024,
year, for sure.
Yeah, like I'm watching what he's doing, and I'm like, it is beastly.
It is 15 points in 10 games. Yeah,
but it's not, as you know, it's not just that. I mean, the production is fabulous, but where was the game he played? He had 8 hits and 7 shots. It was just 2 weeks ago. It kind of lost in my mind. And I think he had 2 goals. And it's like you couldn't possibly. The only thing he could have done is taken a period in net and made 15 saves. Like, it was amazing. And I think he's right now he's the heartbeat of the team.
It's true. It's been quite a year, and he's found his voice, I think, at the right volume level this year. He's found his right leadership ability. It's been quite a year for him. Yep.
How you enjoying calling Canucks games?
Loving it. I am having so much fun. Murph and Shorty are good friends. They're both a couple of knuckleheads that really enjoy what they do. Shorty's so good. It's so good to work with. I hope it's apparent. I mean, we have a lot of fun doing it. And I've liked it more, Matt, than I thought. I thought I would like it. I'm loving it. I think that's great. It's been so great fun.
We are too, buddy. It's been awesome hearing you on those games. Thanks for the time here today. Have a great trade deadline and weekend. We'll catch up soon.
I'm almost certain I will not be traded. I will be on a plane going to Boston. And so when I land, all the nonsense will be over.
Congratulations.
You're so lucky.
I'll just be sitting there with my paper and jotting the trades down. That's all I got. Have a great day, guys.
See ya.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.
All right.
That's Sekeres Blake Price, Grady Sass back here in the Go-Goat Sports studio. The show, a presentation of Applewood Auto Group, and our poll questions, plural. Do the Canucks have to keep up with the Western Conference arms race? Which would you rather see happen? Lindholm finding his game or a trade for Jake Guentzel? Both of them brought to you by our friends at Tim Hortons. Ray, a massive burden off his shoulders this year with his new alignment, calling Canucks games.
Work-life balance is better.
Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As opposed to having to be in there at an ungodly hour, stick handling everything that is a trade deadline. A few things I want to get to from Ray's interview, as well as a curious tweet from that team. And you know which team I'm speaking of.
I've got another curious tweet too, so go ahead.
So first of all, we've been asking people for their deadline wish list and who they think fits the Vancouver Canucks for the last couple weeks. John Shannon, Frank Seravalli, Irv Gaffar, and now Ray Ferraro all seem to be Team Tyler Toffoli.
Mm-hmm.
When that many people,
consensus.
No, exactly. So to me, it's just, and especially if his cost is going to be in line with what people have paid for Anthony Mantha and Vladimir Tarasenko, I wonder if that's the sweet spot here. We had a good debate about when to reunite that fantastic third line when Joshua gets back, Joshua Bluger and Garland. See, I like Ray's take on that better than you always have that in game one of the playoffs. So you give Lindholm the rest of this, 18 games to show something. And if it's not working with Garland on his flank, and it may well be Joshua gets back to his other flank over these next 18 games, then go back to that game one. You ain't got time to bleed in a Stanley Cup playoff series. So if it hasn't worked out with Lindholm, then just it may be Elias. I'm sorry. You're going to have to play right wing here with Elias Pettersson. and go back to that fantastic third line that we saw.
And that's maybe the way it pans out. And it also might pan out that they find lightning in a bottle in 5 games time, play really well to the end of the season, and then game 1 and 2, they fall flat. And then you go back to Bluger with Garland and Joshua.
You keep saying fall flat in game 1 and game 2, and I'm telling you, you ain't got time for that, Blake. There's no bleeding.
But you're going to break it. So you're telling me if Lindholm, Garland, and Joshua are going like gangbusters.
Oh, well, of course not. Of course not.
But then in game 1 and 2 go flat.
Of course not.
You go back to it.
Well, I guess what I would quibble with there is I probably do make that change after game 1. If you're talking you lose game 1 with that trio?
Yeah.
I would come right back with the third line that I know has worked.
We forget about the playoff debates. I can't wait for that one.
No, exactly. Everything's magnified, right? Everything's magnified. Blake, we are going to get an opportunity in the playoffs to criticize who he puts out for a defensive zone faceoff with 3 minutes and 37 seconds left in a tie hockey game.
Yeah, the micro debates.
Those are the sorts of
debates.
Yeah. Remember when you used to do post game and we'd all join you for these sorts of unpackings?
Why is Victor Oreskovich in the lineup?
Well, because everybody was hurt, Grady.
Yeah.
The unpackings of things like that, the Flame series in 2015, the Minnesota, St. Louis, Vegas series in 2020. The curious tweet. That franchise at Golden Knights tweets googly eyes at 12:04 p.m. Pacific time. Of course, everybody.
Are you triggered?
Yes, I'm very triggered. I'm very triggered by everything.
They trolled you and it worked.
People were asking me, Sekeres, when are you going to let this Vegas Knights road paved with gold thing go? Never. Because they've won a cup and they continue to milk and parlay the assets they were gifted on the front end of their franchise.
Tell the people how you were trolled.
Competitive advantage some 8 years later.
Tell the people how you were trolled. The googly eyes didn't mean anything. It's just talking about
Well, they follow up with what? An NHL team can't spontaneously tweet the Google-eyed emoji anymore with a tongue out emoji.
And then go on to announce a sold out sort of fan fest or something like that. That's what
I've never seen someone get so triggered from an emoji.
So triggered. Here's something with
here's my question. Yeah. Are they going to get Guentzel?
No.
And where are you two guys going to be when they get Guentzel? Because there's part of me that believes this is a matter of when, not if.
Alec Martinez going on LTIR could open it.
They're not getting Guentzel. No.
Yeah.
But they might get one of these guys. Shang Peng down in San Jose saying Barabanov's being scratched for trade-related reasons. Not sure on Duclair yet. Told there's significant interest in both heading into tomorrow. So
what about, this is another small potatoes guy, but Luke Kunin is a bowling ball. He can play middle wing, former first-round pick.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I think he had double-digit goals at one point. They're not getting Duhaime, obviously. He's in Colorado. We've talked about Sammy Blais. Luke Kunin would be that nether, talk it mold type of player I could see.
Maybe. Yeah, got up to 15 goals with the Wild way back when.
Is Luke Kunin their plan B from Yakov Trenin, Grady? Yeah. Is that their fallback?
Yeah, when you've got plan Bs on Duhaime. My gosh.
Look. Grady's not the most experienced with trade deadline, folks, so he's breaking in
I
on
used
Yakov
to work them
Trenin
in TSN in Toronto.
and Luke Kunin.
He's so excited, though.
Hey, every move matters. You wait. 7-game series.
I wish
war of attrition, Matthew.
You're not old enough to know the playoffs.
You know what? What I would love to do is I'd love to take you and transport you back 10 years and put you in the producer's booth with Big Daddy Pratt on trade deadline and wait for you to cut in with a Trenin or Kunin.
The last time that the Canucks were hosting playoff games, Grady Sass was brown bag lunching it in the cafeteria on his way to,
third
class. Period. Like, come on.
I was in broadcasting school in Toronto.
That's right.
I'm much better.
How young do you think I am?
It's true. He's not that young.
No?
Over the hill, I'm washed up.
Grady will be at Park Casino along with the rest of us on Wednesday, March 13th from 6 to 7 p.m. doing a live show in advance of the game against the Colorado Avalanche. We'll be at BC Kitchen where you get 15% off the game day menu with your game ticket. Come grab a bite, watch a portion of the show. We'll have some prizes on site. Park's just steps away from Rogers Arena, so you can get to the game in ample time, and you can sign up for the Encore Rewards and get $10 free play to use in the Canucks Gaming Corner. Frank Seravalli coming up next. Great Clips is the official hair salon of the National Hockey League. There are 37 salons in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, all Canadian-owned and operated. Download the app and find the nearest to you. When you're up next for a cut, you'll get a ready next text. Great Clips. It's going to be great. Joined by NHL insider Frank Seravalli of the Daily Face-Off, the Frankly Speaking podcast. And Frank will get right to it. Your tweet, unless something changes, belief is Florida and Vancouver have made a strong push. This is for Guentzel, but don't have the goods to pull it off. Explain further, my friend.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say goods when it comes to the to the Canucks, because the Canucks have the goods to make it happen. They just don't want to reach that far into their prospect pool to do it. And I'm talking about Lekkerimäki. I'm talking about Willander. I'm talking about the other Elias Pettersson. The Canucks really value those players and what they can bring to the team in the relatively near future. And if they're making a play for Jake Guentzel, who's very likely to be a rental, he would probably consider signing, I guess. You'd have to leave that potential open, but I don't think that this deal, at least from Jump Street, is going to include an extension. And with that possibility, I think the Canucks probably believe that it's unwise to be trading top-level prospects in that sense to make something happen with Guentzel. And the other thing you have to allow for the possibility of, though, that's why I said unless something changes, is unless they do something on the Lindholm front, which I would peg at, obviously someone somewhere had mentioned it. There has been real talk, but I don't know how likely it is that that gets pulled off.
Well, that was my next question. Is the three-way with Boston and Lindholm dead?
To my knowledge, it is.
Is Kyle Dubas ready to not trade Jake Guentzel? Like, is it my price? I'm not going to lower the price to whatever the market is willing to pay. Is he ready to just not do anything with him?
No, it's a cute game to play.
Yeah.
But it seems to me, and it's more than that, it seems to be a belief held among these teams that, yeah, he's asking for a high price, and yeah, he might get it, but that without a doubt or a shadow of a doubt that Jake Guentzel is getting traded. Mm-hmm. When you look at the spot that the Penguins have been in, not just this season, but they haven't engaged in one negotiation with Jake Guentzel's camp on an extension. That doesn't sound to me like a player that they're considering hanging on to.
Is it a buyer's market? Like, I'm sorry, like Craig Connor is to blame for a lot of this, but the prices just are not that exorbitant, Frank. So it seems to ask for sun, moon, and stars for Jake Guentzel seems a little out of what we've seen as reality so far this week.
I would say yes and no. The top level players are still going to get top level returns. Guentzel, if Buchnevich moves, those real high impact guys, they're going to get significant real returns. I think you have to park the Hanifin one, though, because that was in a total different class of its own. And I know people have been speed bagging Craig Conroy and the Calgary Flames on social media for the return. They had zero leverage. Noah Hanifin completely and totally hijacked that trade process. Basically, any team that had called, and I'm told the Flames had 2 to 3 different trades that were nearing the finish line that were scuttled by Hanifin's camp, because invariably the team makes a call to the agent and says, hey, we're thinking about trading for this guy. What are the chances we could get him to sign a contract extension? And the answer is always, no, he's not re-signing with you. So then you add in the other teams that were in the mix, like Florida, like Tampa, Vegas, obviously on the Hanifin yes list. He didn't have the full no trade clause, but he leveraged it and the process like he did, leaving the Flames to the point where, me personally, watching all this unfold, and if you've been listening to me, I've been telling you for 3 weeks that they're not going to get a huge return, getting basically a first and probably a second if Vegas wins a round, which I think we all consider probably pretty likely with the moves that they're still to make. Is a first, a second, and an NHL defenseman for having no leverage, is that god awful?
Not terrible, but maybe not what people thought. Yeah.
I'm sure you saw the Luongo gif. It sounds like
not.
of game one and Kevin Nash, the fake broken leg, and he gets out of the wheelchair and goes to the ring.
That's not even my favorite meme going around about the Golden Knights. They had one where it was like doctors in an ER pounding on a patient on the gurney, and they were like, "Here, this is what the Golden Knights are doing with Alec Martinez right now."
That was Stone Cold and Vince McMahon when they did the skit when Vince was in the hospital. And
the
Stone
WWE memes are so good.
Oh,
Yeah, and that's it.
amazing.
But look, that's how they can clear additional space here. I'm told that Alec Martinez has some kind of issue with his foot, a fracture in his foot. I don't know what the plan is. Could he potentially be held out until the playoffs start? I don't know. Either way, with Hanifin, assuming that he signs an extension, which I would think is likely, they've got their replacement for Martinez.
Let's play that out, because this market screams bloody murder about CBA loopholes, and rightfully so, given that it was the team was retroactively punished on the backdiving Luongo contract with a cap recapture penalty that we haven't seen before. If Vegas somehow puts Martinez on LTIR and makes the trade for Jake Guentzel, does the entire league scream bloody murder?
In the wake of 75% retained on Hanifin.
At that point, do you think?
Wait a second. Hold on. Blake, what does 75% retained on Hanifin have anything to do with the price of tea in China?
Because, and Gary Bettman said this with Roberto Luongo's contract, because nothing was wrong with Roberto Luongo's contract by the letter of the CBA law. They simply, saw a gap in the wording and how it was worded and said, we can do this. There's nothing that prohibits what we're doing. Just like there's nothing that prohibits them from getting the 75% retained, but it is expressly
the spirit
against the spirit of the regulation there that only 50% should be retained in any trade. So no, they didn't break any law. But it's clearly not what was intended when they drew that up.
Everyone's been doing this. Teams have been shopping players using third-party brokers for years now. What are you talking? I don't even understand what you're talking about.
Okay, throw the 75% thing out of the equation. If Martinez goes LTIR and they're able to make the Guentzel trade, at that point, do you see a groundswell of teams going to the league and saying, look, this is getting out of hand?
Let's start with this. I think no team is happy with how Vegas has wielded their dollars. And in fact, they were brought up and called on the carpet at a general manager's meeting last year about their usage of LTIR. I don't think that went anywhere. I know that the NHL is closely monitoring any LTIR decision and wants to see the medical support. But if they could take an X-ray and plop it up onto the screen that shows a fractured bone in Alec Martinez's foot, who's going to say anything about it? And not for nothing, the Mark Stone spleen injury is a real and legitimate, serious thing. He had internal bleeding with his spleen. Mm-hmm. And you can go, I'm not going to play Dr. Seravalli on this show, but you can go find out for yourself the details and how damaging that might potentially be. I don't think he is on track to play in game one, round one.
Okay.
But
we'll inform Roberto Luongo after his tweet yesterday. Frank, getting back on Lindholm and the three-way deal with Boston, why did that break down? And in that scenario, were the Canucks going to give up more than just Lindholm to get Guentzel?
It's a good question, but to my knowledge, I don't think it was ever actually contemplated as a three-way deal. I think it was more so along the lines of machinations in order for the Canucks to get the ammo that they needed or felt they needed to bring in someone like Guentzel. So when it comes to, moving the pieces around the chessboard, and that would basically be Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. That was the thought process, but I don't know how far down the track it actually got. Obviously the talk was real. There's no doubt about that part of it. But it was a lot of maneuvering to pull off, and not saying it's dead. It's just that in the back of the Canucks' minds, I'm told that part of what they've been trying to decipher is Lindholm just not a fit, or has the team as a whole just not really played well around him at the same exact period of time? That part is going to be a lot tougher to dissect, and we may not have an answer on that autopsy until May or June. But certainly along the lines of, you got to peek into what the Canucks were potentially looking at. And I think the unfortunate part of that is Lindholm's no dummy. He would see that. Someone would be mentioning that to him. It just kind of makes for an awkward rest of whatever happens next if that Band-Aid isn't ripped off.
What Canucks fans want, though, is they want addition. They don't necessarily want the substitution. And it doesn't sound like there was ever a world where they would have Guentzel and Lindholm together.
I don't think so. And that's the part that really threw me off is you miss a lot of the optionality that you have with Lindholm, which is Lindholm came in and started on the wing. Jake Guentzel can't go and play center, but Lindholm can. And we know that he's a proven, mostly kind of elite second line center. Guentzel doesn't have that in his arsenal, which I think it would be a miss to make that swap.
Plus the point here is addition at forward for the Vancouver Canucks. It's not simply improving the quality, which they've already done once with Kuzmenko turning into Lindholm, but they need more forwards and particularly wingers.
But Lindholm and Toffoli, would that be a different kettle of fish?
I think so. I think it certainly wouldn't cost as much to pull off as Guentzel. And I don't. There's been some really mixed reviews on Toffoli, I think, over the last 24 to 48 hours. The production is proven, but when you look at, I know a couple teams that have been more or less kind of scared off based on the research that they've done. I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's a chemistry thing, a locker room thing, but they basically have just said, like the player, not interested in moving forward, we're out. So I think that's part of, the thought process is you do have something going, you have some chemistry. You got to be careful about injecting some matches into that.
Yeah. So is it fair to say that Toffoli is their plan B after Guentzel? And when you take a look at what the rental wingers have gone for, whether that's Tarasenko, who of course had no trade, but goes for a fourth and a third, whether that's Mantha, who goes for a second and fourth, maybe even throw in Wenberg, if despite the fact he's a centerman, for a second and fourth. Is that what we're looking at roughly on Toffoli?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think you could see a team that's really desperate for Toffoli stretch into the late first round pick territory. Especially if New Jersey, they've got a ton of cap space and can retain, like they already were involved in a retain transaction. So that they're willing to do that. I could see Toffoli stretch into that category. But going back to Blake's point, I think once you get past Guentzel, maybe Smith, Buchnevich, like take the 5 top players at the top of the market. After that, it's a huge buyer's market. And I think that part of it, beauty in the eye of the beholder, is what interests the Canucks probably more than a big splash if it's not Guentzel, because they trust their scouting eye. They trust that part of their operation, that if you don't need to outlay significant assets and still can improve your team or feel like you're improving it, that's probably a much more, I think, smart bet in what, look at the way everyone else has loaded up in the West. Like Colorado and Vegas still have their 2024 first round picks, and I think are likely to move between now and Friday at 12 Pacific. Do you really want to potentially be in a spot where you are out in round 1 or 2 and you have guys that are just pure rentals that you gave up huge assets for? I think that's a real thing they have to be cautious of.
And I think that I think management and the dressing room do actually like Toffoli in Vancouver. So I think for them, they think that there might be just better value for what you give up ultimately. I've heard the same thing.
If they know that, if you have knowledge of that, which they would, that's fine. But short of that, like, they're trying hard on Guentzel. I think your line of progression and thinking is correct. Guentzel 1, Toffoli 2. Then after that, I think it's all over the map. I think it legitimately could be like a Brandon Duhaime and a depth defenseman kind of package.
Nobody with term. They're not going to ante up for guys with term, the Vetrano market, that sort of stuff.
I don't think so. No.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you about Duhaime. Are they still involved there?
Yep. Definitely keeping tabs. I'm told Minnesota has like a number of teams that are on the list that they think they're getting a second round pick for him. So I don't know if the Canucks will go that high, but that'd be an interesting bottom 6 piece for sure.
Do you have any defenseman names for us?
I don't. I would have thought from a pure, not the player or the contract or the cap hit but from a pure stylistic fit, that someone like a Joel Edmondson would have been kind of exactly along the lines of what they'd be thinking. Just reliable, steady, size, defense first. I think that's what the Canucks need. That's my personal opinion, and I don't know if that's what they're looking at.
We'll be watching the Daily Face-Off Trade Deadline show tomorrow morning, Frank. Thank you for Friday morning. Thank you for this, and we'll catch up next week.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.
Matt Sekeres, Blake Price, Grace Sass back here in the Go-Goat Sports studio at Wall Center. We recorded that interview with Frank Seravalli just before the Brandon Duhaime trade went down. They didn't get a second-round pick. They got a third-round pick from Colorado for him, and discussed earlier in the show, and you can catch that on podcast, whether the Canucks should have beaten that or matched that price. Just a reminder of what we got coming up here. Canucks Conversation is getting going here at 2:00 with David Quadrelli and Patrick Johnston sitting in for
Harmon today.
Oh, is Harmon back today?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Harmon Dial
from
of
a hotel
the
room
Athletic.
in Vegas.
Apropos that he's in the city that has all the action and not just the gambling and the shows.
Again.
No? What do you mean? The Canucks are playing Vegas tonight, Price.
Did we even talk about
I'm
that
allowed
game?
to talk. Yes, we talked about that game.
Okay.
We talked about Demko's in. We
Right,
talked about
right.
the lineup, who's playing with whom, McKayeff with Miller and Besser being the most.
Pods is back.
We also,
Woo!
Colson is back. We also talked about the Vegas Golden Knights trade for Noah Hannafin and what they could also do with their available cap space and even further LTIR space if they put Alec Martinez on the long-term injured list. So conversation coming up with David Quadrelli on Harmon Dial. And tomorrow, Friday, we'll be back with trade deadline coverage. We're going to start 11:30 a.m. as always on YouTube, Insta, Facebook, and Twitter. And it will be an extended show, much like today's. Jeff Patterson's going to hop in.
If they do enough, we might be able to cross streams. We might be able to bring Sekeres and Price right up to Convo.
That's ambitious.
It is very ambitious. I don't suspect that will happen. But if
You and I have done the 4-hour trade
Yeah.
deadline show before,
Yeah.
I'd like to think those days are behind us.
I always knew you were a cross streamer, a stream crosser.
Patrick Johnson's going to stop by. as well.
Ghostbusters reference, nothing else. Come
Okay.
on. Ghostbusters.
Are we done here?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you to everybody for listening and watching.
And subscribe, like, and follow if you haven't already.
Thank you.
Thank you.